The discovery of, call it being, presence, emptiness, stillness, consciousness, God, whatever word that you would like to use. Hi, baby. You wanna lay with me? The discovery. It's got a big stick. I'll show you. Giant stick. So cute. Like, hey, Ma, I see you're doing something. Let me join you. So the discovery of presence. I like the word presence personally. Let me adjust this again. So I really like the word presence. I know different people use different words. That's one that just feels just very alive to me. Presence and stillness both feel very alive. But coming to the realization that that is what I am in truth has been, I mean, it really changed everything. It changed absolutely everything about my life. I mean, I really don't talk about, my background too much. But, I grew up in a very intellectual household. I went to a very prestigious university. I got a degree in mechanical engineering and, worked in the tech world for most of my adult career. I worked in the tech industry. And I was a big thinker and, a seeker, just in a very different way. I look back and realize that that was the same energy, the same seeking energy. I was loving this stick right now. But it was just pointed somewhere different. I was always seeking for the next thing. I was always trying to be better, to become someone, to do something important. My nervous system was honestly a complete wreck. So I was very highly overworked. I was very, I don't even know if motivated is the right word. Driven. I was a very driven person. I was always doing something, always being productive. I always, had some sort of a side project going. I had my full-time job that I worked, but I also did, some like contract work on the side for other tech startups during my time in Austin. And I was very driven. I wanted to be something. I really wanted to be something. My mind was very busy. It was very active. And that was a pretty slow death. The death of that doer. It started really during, I guess it started before COVID. But, I just found myself when I was living in Texas, there was a park near my house that I just adored. And I would spend a lot of time there. It was one of the few places in the city where I could go and not really see a lot of people. So I would often take my dog Bailey on walks there, on really long walks, and just, be there for hours at a time and just be alone. And it felt so good, and just really started to immerse myself in nature. And then COVID happened. And yeah, I feel like the stillness just started growing, and my time in nature just really started expanding. And nature's really been one of my biggest teachers. It's such a teacher for stillness and for presence and for just authenticity. You must really loving this stick. Look at that face, y'all. Look at that face. So I can't really even begin to describe how extreme this shift has been. It literally changed everything. Like, I don't recognize really anything about my life. You know, to go from living in a city and working a tech job that was, you know, probably, I would say 50 to 60 hours a week of working. You know, I was very much the city dwelling yogi who did all the, you know, heated yoga classes and was just always just going. It was like the little Energizer bunny, just always going. And it changed everything. You know, it's funny to look back on that life, and you know, even sometimes when I have conversations with people and they find out about my background, there will be a desire for people to talk to me in a more intellectual way, or to talk about kind of science related things, or you know, more philosophical type of discussions. And I used to love that stuff. And it's kind of hilarious, actually, that awakening made me kind of dumb. Like, it made me a little dumb. Because I don't have the capacity for that stuff anymore. I listen to those things and I'm just like, wow, that talking like that feels exhausting. And I remember how exhausting it was, you know, just thinking all the time. Thinking. So much thinking about everything. Trying to plan for everything. Trying to anticipate everything. It was exhausting. I only see now just how much energy that consumed. It's wild. And I really needed to have all those things stripped away. You know, the seeker energy died. You know, it started when I ended up losing my my job in tech. I got laid off, and I was traveling around the country at the time, living in a travel trailer, or was about to be. It wasn't quite yet. I got laid off the day before. I was supposed to travel for an indefinite amount of time, and this was during COVID. So I was initially planning to work remotely. And then life just started taking things away, starting with my career, with my identity as a smart person, as a successful person. You know, I was very successful at what I did. I was very good at my job. And it started taking everything away. And just immersing me more and more in nature. It was like this magnet. Nature was just like a magnet that drew me to it. You know, so just looking at this life, living in rural West Virginia versus inner city, like in the middle of Austin, Texas, where I could walk everywhere and bike everywhere. I was just surrounded by people and buildings and noise. So everything has changed, you know. yeah, awakening made me a little dumb. You know, I have people talk to me in an intellectual way and I can't really follow it anymore. I can hear the underlying current, like that's kind of what I pay attention to, is there's like a current under the surface of anything that people are talking about, and it's usually an energetic current or an emotional current. So my capacity to engage is solely from that place now, which is very different. So my mind has largely been quieted. It doesn't operate in the same way anymore. And that in itself was a massive adjustment for somebody who grew up just like being an intellectual so driven in, you know, just going to one of the top engineering schools and having that kind of background, and whew, it's a big shift. The mind was quieted in all this. There's a train coming by, so I'm going to keep the video going. You got cute ears, lady. You know that? I don't really know what I'm wanting to talk about. What else? I'll pause for a moment while the engine drives by. Lots of engines on that one. I thought that this was going to be different. I know, like, everybody says that, and I hear that all the time, but I really thought that this was going to look different. You know, I had some pedestalized, elevated notion of what awakening was going to be. And like the further that I get into this, the more I see the humanity in teachers and gurus and people who talk about this stuff. It's like the specialness that I once attributed to them is, you know, pretty much gone. And I just see real people, just like a realness, like a beautiful raw realness. You know, and I guess I think about, you know, I consider the ways that I used to think about teachers or gurus, and something that I've noticed myself bumping up against lately is kind of an aversion, like a really deep aversion to being seen as a teacher, or holding a projection as an awake one or an enlightened one. Because really what this is every role dies. It's like I can no longer be anything. I'm not anything. Like I don't believe that I'm anything anymore. Those beliefs are dead. But I've become very sensitive to feeling projection and noticing when I feel that there's a projection being pointed in my direction. And I think maybe I'm still I don't feel super grounded yet in the truth of what I am. You know, I think that that'll likely take a considerable amount of time to really get to a point where I feel really grounded in that. But I feel very sensitive to being on the receiving end of projections. Like I can feel all of that really viscerally. And I still notice a bit of an aversion to, in particular, the teacher projection. You know, I notice sometimes when I'll either read comments, which I don't do super frequently, or meet with people one-on-one, that I'll feel that. And it feels like a costume. It feels uncomfortable to me. Perhaps, you know, part of it is that there's just not a readiness yet. Or maybe there won't ever be a readiness in teaching this stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'll never want to. And, you know, part of this dance with YouTube and my YouTube channel getting a little bit bigger and gaining followers is, you know, what somebody very lovingly pointed out to me was that truth is walking a razor's edge. And I want to walk a razor's edge, especially with this platform, because I can see and I can feel in myself how it could easily turn into a mode of validation. And, you know, it started out that way a bit, if I'm being honest. Like, I didn't really realize it, but it was also just a way for me to process what I was experiencing, because I didn't really have an outlet for that. And I want to walk with this platform in humility and in integrity, and not use it as an escape or as a way to create a new identity as an awake one or as a teacher. And I really noticed with my my video that ended up kind of blowing up a little bit, and getting a lot of views, that there was like this thing in me that was like, whoa, pump the brakes. And you know, it's interesting to really be honest with myself in that there's something in me that doesn't. It's like a double edge. It's or a what's the right way to say it? There's like two things with that. It's something in me that knows it's not quite ready to teach. If I do end up doing that, I don't know, but it doesn't quite feel ready. And also it's really highlighting still a really subtle doubt, like a conditioned belief or a conditioned habituated way of doubting. That like, oh, you're not quite there yet, or you're not quite prepared for this. And there's truth in that, and also that sneaky little belief is really being highlighted. And the further that this goes, the more subtlety, you know, the more the beliefs get that are being highlighted, and the things that are being illuminated are just more and more subtle and kind of sneaky. Hey, baby. So I think I wanted to speak to that, you know, just what I've been feeling, just like a little bit of a yuck response to the attention, to this channel getting a little bit bigger, to reaching a wider audience, and just especially when it comes to truth, feeling the responsibility in that. Because truth is just such a it's such a sacred thing to me. You know, it's a revelation and a discovery that, you know, in one way I fought for, and in another way I had to do nothing for. And it feels, just knowing and feeling and discovering like the truth of what I am is just so, it's so sacred. And I see how much I misunderstood teachers when they were talking, and how my mind just took concepts and just ran with it and dug a deeper hole and, you know, into my own delusions. And I see so clearly how that happened. And so there's a bit of a sense of responsibility in just in myself wanting to stand in integrity and speak from my experience, and just, you know, always checking myself to make sure that that's happening, and not picking up any projections or any roles and sneakily, unknowingly creating new identities around them. I don't want that. So I guess all that said, I, you know, will likely be posting, I don't know if it'll necessarily be less, but perhaps with slightly less frequency. You know, I won't go too far in between things, but, and I feel like I've, you know, kind of naturally, since that one video kind of blew up, have pulled back a little bit, and have felt myself, something in me pull back a little bit. And yeah, just asking myself, inquiring more deeply. And yeah, where I find myself is still an integration point. You know, I'm still figuring out how to be nobody in the world, and, you know, just this constant daily practice in every moment of of telling the truth in all moments, which takes such a diligence and such a deep internal discernment. And so there's still a big integration happening, you know, in my own life and my own experience, on the heels of, you know, my, just the realization of what I am, of what I've always been, of what you are and have always been. And I guess this video is maybe just to speak to that, to, like, there's nothing special here. I haven't arrived anywhere that you need to get to. Like, this isn't, there's nothing that you can acquire in any of this. Like, you're not going to acquire knowledge or specialness or anything like that. Okay, lay down. There you go. Thank you. If anything, you're going to become more human, more vulnerable, more cracked open, more sensitive to the suffering of the world. I hope y'all are really getting a kick out of, like, what's been happening with Luna during this video. Just like getting after that stick while I'm talking, so I hope that's been a fun addition to this video. Yeah, don't turn me into anything. Don't turn me into a teacher, pedestalize me. All I can do is share what I've seen, the way that I live, speak from experience, be humble, and yeah, maybe part of this video is just a promise to myself and a prayer to myself to do that and to continue with this platform in a way that is standing in a deep humility, and being able to continue to ask myself hard questions and illuminate any blind spots, and do no harm in the sharing of truth, because it is sacred. It is the most sacred. And from where I'm standing, the only thing that's really worth talking about and sharing. I just love it. I love speaking about it. And I intend to continue to do so, and to do so with as much humility as I'm able to. So that's kind of my prayer for myself, and just speaking that to anybody watching this too feels important. So this is a very solitary journey. So if you look to me for anything, maybe it's how hard this process can be, or how human it is, or how messy it is. And my hope, if nothing else, is just perhaps providing you with a permission slip to be messy and to be flawed and to be human. And death is messy. Death isn't necessarily easy. And to maybe just give a little comfort. I've found so much comfort in other people speaking, and in books written by people that have gone through this. So don't give your power away. Don't pedestalize people that talk about this. This is a solitary journey for you to discover who you are. That's all. And thank you for the support and for the attention and the presence. It's appreciated. I'll see you next time.